I invite Mr. President of the Republic, Mr. José Pedro Castillo Terrones, to address the Congress.
Señora Presidenta del Congreso de la República.
Ms. President of the Congress of the Republic.
Señores y señoras congresistas de la República.
Congressmen and congresswomen of the Republic. Mr. President of the sister republics of Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Ecuador. Your Highness the King of Spain. Mr. Vice Presidents, Foreign Ministers, members of the diplomatic bodies, and all the authorities here, women and men of the Peruvian people. I start greeting my brothers, descendants of the peoples, to my brothers, to my teacher brothers, to the Quechuas brothers, to the Aymaras, to the Aguajún, to the brothers Shipiwos, to the Afro-Peruvian brothers. I talk to you this symbolic day, 200 years after the Declaration of Independence of Peru, 2 centuries of Republican life. It is a huge pride for me to be here in this Congress. But despite we celebrate a very symbolic date, our history in this territory comes far beyond that. We are a cradle of 5,000 years of civilizations and cultures in our lands, flourished important states like the Wari state, and then the Tahuantinsuyo state. During 4,000 years, our ancestors found a way to solve the problems and to live in harmony with the nature. It was in that way until the Castilla men arrived that, with the help of Filipinos and taking advantage of chaos and disunion, they conquered the state that so far dominated the central Andean region. The defeat of Incanaco started with the colonial era, and then with the foundation of the big kingdom established the differences that today we see. The 3 centuries in which this territory belonged to the Spanish crown allowed the Spanish to exploit the minerals that developed Europe with the labor hand of the grandfathers of all of us. The repression to the revolt of Tupac Amaru consolidated the racial regime imposed by the Kingdom of Spain. It ended the Andean elites and subordinated most of the indigenous inhabitants in this rich country. 40 years after that, independence of Peru from Spain in 1821 didn't bring a real improvement for most of the Peruvians. The so-called indigenous continues to be exploited as second-category citizens. With the time, the Afro-Peruvian community brought by force it added those who came from China and then from Japan.
Incontables peruanos seguíamos viviendo en servidumbre. Recién con la Constitución del 79, todos los adultos pudimos ejercer el derecho al voto.
Violence regimes. Those who were registered in the famous English report called the Blue Book until the 60s. Many places were sold with farmers inside. Many Peruvians were still living under the regime. With the Constitution of the 79, all the adults could exercise our right to vote. The popular organization advanced in the access to the rights processes that was caught by the coup d'etat of 1992, who created the basis to a lack of rights, to a weakening of the state, and for the rules that we see today. Since then, our country has grown and has had several governments that access to the government thanks to the popular vote, that, however, have not complied with the Constitution. This time, a government of the people is here to rule with the people and for the people. To build from the bottom, from the ground, it is the first time our country will be governed by a farmer, a person that belongs, as many of the Peruvians, to the oppressed sectors for so many centuries. It is also the first time a political party created inside the country wins the elections democratically. And that a teacher, precisely a rural teacher, is elected to be the constitutional president of the Republic. It is difficult to say or to express the honor for me in this moment. I want you to know that the pride of Peru runs through my veins, that I am also a son of this country, founded with the sweat of our ancestors, elected with the lack of opportunities of our parents, and despite that, I also saw them resist. That my life was forged in the cold of the farms, and these hands of a farmer carried my children when they were young. That the history of this Peru, for so time silenced, it is also my history. I was that child that studied in a rural school, and I am here today. So that history is not the exception. I want you to know that you have my word. I would not let you down. Our political lines, the fight against the pandemic of COVID-19, to fight for life and health. Our first big task is to continue the fight against the pandemic that so much has hit our country in these days. I want to remember Peruvians. I want to remind of you all the Peruvians who are not with us, and that today we miss. We will honor their memory, and we will make these a priority. The mutations of the virus are still concerning the scientifics of the world. This has not ended, but I am right that we will come forward, listen to the science, and of course putting the well-being of the Peruvians in front. We should maximize our effort to achieve the vaccination of all our population as soon as possible. Health in our government will be a fundamental right that the state should guarantee. The physical and mental health should be the first priority of the government. We will have a universal system care, decentralized. We will prioritize primary medical attention to strengthen prevention and to bring health to the population. We'll improve the attention capacity of all the medical centers, and we will to create 5,000 medical teams to have a territorial criteria so any Peruvian family to have a medical coverage. At the end of my mandate, we will have specialized hospitals per region, and we will prioritize clinical chirurgical hospitals and other kinds of hospitals. To bring health to all the Peruvians, we have to work in all the levels of the government. That's why I call on all the regional governors of the country to create your reports and to locate the grounds where these hospitals are going to be built. We will initiate also with the construction of the hospital in San Juan del Urinacho. We should end centralism that caused millions of Peruvians to go to Lima for a medical care. We should value the work of women and men who have devoted their lives to health, to the health care. Those who sacrificed these last years, thousands have died during the pandemic, and we will have to work for all those who are working in the health sector. I want you to know that you have an ally in this government. No more precarious work. The country needs the commitment with the health workers. We will develop the capabilities in the country, and those capabilities the country needs. And all the Peruvians, I say that your health and well-being is our priority. Economic reactivation. In the last 30 years, we have discussed a lot about the implemented economic model. Despite that, any government listened the voice of the majority, and they refused to change what the population was claiming. But the pandemic showed that the critics made to the economic model were not only legit, but they were also valid. Today, the population asks for change, and it is not willing to refuse those changes. Now, it is true that those changes put in risk the achievements during the last decade. No, it is not true. It is possible to do all these changes with responsibility, respecting the private property, but also putting first the interest of the nation. And we will work for that because we want to build a prosperous country, a more just country, a country to generate richness, and that richness to be distributed through all the Peruvians. This is the commitment that today, July 28th, I make. Today, We want to recover the employment and the income of the families for what we have to work to improve our economy. Unfortunately, during the electoral campaign, they've tried to frighten the population, saying that we want to take your cars, your houses, factories, and the property of the citizens, which is totally untrue. We won't do any of that because we want the economy to maintain order, which is the basis of the decisions of the investments. The properties of the people obtained with effort is by the state. What we propose is to stop the abuses of the monopolies, of the companies that charge high money for the basic services, as it has happened with the domestic gas and medicines. And with the financial entities charge even 200% for credit. So, for example, the Bank of the Nation should have the capacity to give the citizens all the banking services with reasonable rates that allow them to compete in this market. We do not want to state the economy or to make a different economy. We just wanted the economies of the families, those with the less income, to be stable, that the big companies do not rob the state, that the state fulfills with its supervision of state of the society. I do not think that any Peruvian should be or can be against this purpose. The Lavajato case is something that we will have for a long time. We will have to finish, we have to end with the corruption, but we have to sanction firmly all who participate in it. In the mentioned case, we see many government, even 3 former presidents who are involved in the case. 2 of them have been detained, but paradoxically, we do not see any businessmen in jail. Some of them were in jail for some days, but they are free now, and even outside the country. That's not correct. Promoting investment and a new way of creating new projects is a country with a agricultural and mining tradition. All the cultures that flourished in the territory have shown their abilities, their skills that today is inheritance of all of us. However, there is a huge critic in all these sectors. We will implement a criteria of social rent. So this means that all projects should with dynamizing the economy to improve the national income, and that the benefits are counted locally, where the tax collection to be relevant and positive to improve the wages, complying with the international organization says. All this is a means to create technology in several areas to improve the distribution of the income, where the intervention does not generate privileged groups and those excluded, to promote and to preserve culture and the environment. or intervention should give real guarantees on the environment. The actors should follow and should be conditioned to these scenarios and not the other way around. The territorial organizations should participate in the implement. If a project does not have social rentability, then it won't be possible. So this means an impact with the private investors, with the state intervening to reduce costs, to maintain legal security, and in turn the local population to receive income and to generate development and to have better opportunities. Always taking care of the environment, we will promote the participation of the state, as all the countries in the region do, as partners. The Peruvian state has several challenges. It needs a new way of doing mining in its territory, in tourism and transportation, in education. We've said more than once how the educational system is working. In my government, it will be a priority, and we will declare immediately public education in emergency state. To avoid inequality. So for this, we will create new measures, a new budget for the basic and superior education, which will be improved. We want to improve the budget in the educational sector to give answers to the educational needs of the vulnerable sectors, rural and bilingual sectors. We want to double the budget for the public education in the first years of our government and to increase the budget in the GDP. We will prioritize actions to help to close the social gaps. It will be strengthened the primary education. In the first semester of 2022, our schools will have face-to-face classes. For that, we will guarantee the vaccination of all the teachers and the personnel of the educational services. We will adopt the virus security measures in all the institutions. We will promote the educational careers, guaranteeing quality. We will recognize the role of the teachers and the directors of the public entities, establishing new stimulus to guarantee good education. We consider that the educational system to have a firm basis of stable teachers. We will promote in the rural areas it is time to work on this, and the rural teachers, heroes of the Peruvian education, to have support so they can actually work. We will guarantee the improvement of the knowledge and young people, reducing the historical gaps through strengthening education destined to the youngest. We will foster and guarantee that the national curriculum will be promoted by the teachers, the communities, the teachers, the parents, and the students. Innovation will be a priority in the schools, and internet connectivity. In our government, internet will be a right, not only a service. So initially, we will work in 800 institutions for the technical education. In the school, we will guarantee the food in primary and secondary schools. We will prioritize to prepare food with local products, so this system works well in other countries, and we consider that here it will be the same. We will foster this superior schools of technical studies, also the technical formation of students in the last 3 years of the secondary schools. We will allocate 1 billion souls to pay the social debt. Mining. To put some order in mining, this means clear rules. New stages without surprises for the actors, using the well practices given in other stages and other scenarios, expelling corruption, shortening procedures to facilitate the exploration, exploitation, control, and the closure of each project. We will do everything possible to produce more and with more value. So in our Peru, we have 3 million Peruvians who do not have drinkable water. The coverage of water in the urban area reaches 95% of the Peruvians, while in the rural areas only 68%. And the sewers is even more concerning. In the urban area, 89% have access to it. In the rural areas, only 30% have access to it. The gap of infrastructure is 49 billion souls. So our commitment with the people of Peru is to close that gap 100%. For that, we need a total change in the way to serve the state. In the first 100 days of our government, we will strengthen and we will create new works with that purpose through new nucleus as a mechanism to promote direct participation of the civil society and to fight corruption. We will give more access to the population of the national program Techo Propio. The hope of hundreds and thousands of families to have their own roof, their own houses. From now on, it is a reality. We will promote the normalization of new works with local governments, and we will simplify the norm of new agreements to work faster. Production. We will promote and we will recognize industries and investment with social tax. And for the small businesses and for the community sectors, we will revise the new productivity to more than 1.5 million families. We will allow our children to eat good proteins and rich in iron, to have new irrigation projects, to participate in the international markets. Women and vulnerable population. The national program Mujer Emprendedora to give accessible credits to dynamize the family economy, to face the economic consequences of the pandemic, which has placed women in informal, vulnerable employment, will foster the national system of the people, of taking care of the people, like old people, people with disabilities, given that 98,000 people have lost at least one of their parents because of the pandemic. From now on, the state will finance the comprehensive rehabilitation of the victims of sexual violence. We will strengthen the national system of justice and sanction against the violence against women. We will have new protection and justice for the victims. Minister of Science and Technology and the scientific researcher for our low level in science, technology, and innovation. The exports corresponding to 2019 were comprised by 79% of the products without added product. This percentage grew to 81% last year. So we think this will get even worse, and to face these new challenges, my government will promote the creation of the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Technological Innovation. So with this new ministry, we will empower the generation of knowledge for technological independence of Peru. It will be necessary to study the possibility of a new career to incorporate new talents and to repatriate all those who went abroad for lack of opportunities. A country which is not capable to recognize to have its ancestral knowledge and to create new ones through research and to have a universe of professionals in this area will never have the levels of development required to distribute the public services, as a good living condition, transportation, and a quality healthcare system. Petro Peru. Petro Peru means to participate in all the aspects of the oil industry, the exploration and exploitation of the oil and natural gas wells, the transportation to the refineries and to trade the oil. And that way we can regulate the final prices and to avoid exploitation to the workers, to increase the prices of the foods, and to avoid the monopolies. We are not talking about public subsidies, because these companies should participate in the market with its own resources, but working reasonably and without abuses. So we are willing to recover sovereignty, especially our national resources, because many of these natural resources are in the hands of foreigners with contracts and guarantees. That's one of the main reasons that compels us to create a new political constitution that, among other things, allow us to create new contracts to the changing circumstances of the international market, to guarantee the income of the state and the well-being of the citizens. The national police is the cornerstone in which the public activity fights against this evil, but that's not enough. Despite the efforts made in this area, we still have gangs in the streets. Aggressions to the physical integrity of the people. We believe that we should expand the police systems in Peru, which is not odd thing that the organized population to give security to the population. And we want to summon all the population to create new groups and to include these groups in the national security and in the regional levels. So we will allocate a new budget to give them the needed logistics, and we will promote their participation in the communities. We will strengthen these groups' laws and respecting their autonomies. We are sure that together with the National Police of Peru, we will have access the name that, following the reality, should be renamed as the Ministry of the Cultures. In a diverse country as ours, we need a ministry that recognizes the diverse languages and cultures, languages that we use today, and to create new policies where the original peoples to participate in their creation, fight against corruption. We will revise all the laws against corruption and all the crimes linked to that, and the sanctions imposed in the legal code to reinforce them regarding the public officials and the national and foreign companies. We should have a legislation that does not encourage the criminals. The Comptroller of the Republic has said that corruption robs to the country more than 20 billion souls a year. So we will have to empowered the General Comptroller of the Republic, the General Prosecutor's Office, and all the legal system, so we can reduce corruption with energy. Regulation of the state's some governments have exerted some pressure on the communication media, which should paralyze the critics. It should be regulated in a better way. In this sense, we will establish that this expenditure will be given prioritizing the virtual networks. We believe that in this way we can guarantee a better coverage of the state institutions, transportation and communication. We should create new rural roads as a priority to improve the public transportation that allow us to shorten the trips and to improve the living standards of our population. We should implement a new system of monitoring and vehicle supervision through preventive control. The use of the national network of the Peruvian state and using all the national institutions to have better work. The Inca train that comprises the road from Cajamarca to Yuno, using all the coast of Tumbastana. Those will be financed internationally. Foreign trade and tourism. We have a new program of financing 500 million sols to have an impact, to give new value to the touristic sector. We will improve the opening of new trades and bilateral trade and regional integration, improving the exports and the income of hard currency. We will improve all these areas for the better interest of the country. Our country has huge challenges in environmental issues, so we have to create an instrument as the action plan of the National Strategy of Biological Diversity, the National Plan of the Agreement of Stockholm, and the heavy metals and toxic substances. We need a Ministry of Environment capable of stopping the environmental degradation and the deforestation of our forests. our vulnerability, that guarantee quality standards, that bets for a sustainable mining and a transit to an inclusive economy. We agree that Peru, to become a carbon neutral country for 2050, and for that purpose we should advance in complying with the commitment to reduce greenhouse effect gases in 40%. Our government reaffirms this commitment as it was expressed in the United Nations. Our country has 13% of the Amazonas territory. In the 2000, we had 78 million hectares of forest, but we have deforested thousands of hectares since then. We have to revert this trend. The Amazonas is the main inheritance we will give to the next generations, and we will comply with our responsibility in this part of the world. It is my commitment. New law of territorial reordering that guarantee that the tools we use will eliminate the obstacles that should be used to strengthen the environmental policy, the social protection, the public systems of pensions, and the attention of the healthcare of the population that we talked previously are in crisis. It is true that the Constitution of 1993 does not comprise the figure of a Constituent Assembly, neither the elaboration of a new Constitution. It doesn't talk about the President of the Republic to summon to a constituent process. It only mentions the possibility of a partial reform or a total reform of the Constitution by the Congress. So does this mean that the people is condemned to be prisoners of this Constitution for the rest of your life? Despite the majority of those who voted in the elections and that today are less than 46-year-old didn't participate in the approval of that Constitution, Of course, the answer is no. The constituent power comes from the people and not from the governors or the authorities. The Constitutional Court stated several years ago that this power should be exercised exclusively by the people through a constituent referendum. That's why I say here that we'll present to the Congress of the Republic, always respecting the constitutional procedure as expressed in the 246th article of the Constitution, a bill to reform the Constitution, and we hope it can be approved and then ratified in a popular referendum. There are some people that say why we need a Constituent Assembly if the Constitution should be or can be reformed by the Congress. Those who asked this question should remember that the executive power should be focused in governing and the Congress in legislating and to exercise the political power to the government. Tasks that should be focused in attending the urgent matters of each day. That's why the constituent labor should not be in charge of these organs. The Constituent Assembly should be elected by the people exclusively to create a new constitution, which is the product of a political debate that is going to be taken to a referendum, and after that it will be dissolved. The Constituent Assembly of the Bicentennial, should be plurinational, popular. Its composition should include candidates proposed by the political organizations and percentage of candidates coming from the indigenous peoples, from the native peoples, of the Afro-Peruvian people, of independent political parties coming from popular organizations, and expressing and representing all the Peruvian people. I summon all the Peruvians. I should say that I will not rule from the Pizarro house, because I think we have to break with the colonial symbols to end up with the domination that has been living for so many years. We will give this palace to the new Ministry of Cultures, so it can be used so it can be used as a museum that shows our history from its origins to the current days. All the Peruvians should know that the tasks we have are hard tasks, and we'll all have to work. That's why we have to leave aside the ideological differences, the political decisions, and then personal interests to leave behind these crises. So I summon all the Peruvians, women and men of this homeland, and I say to you that it is time of reconstruction the national unity. It is a task for all of us. We will do this in democracy, seeking a national union, assuring once again that July the 28th, 2026, I will come back to my teaching work. As our ancestors said before starting a new task, good tumaya, good tunquilla, and good maquilla. Only one force, one heart, one direction. And that the direction of the progress and social justice for all the Peruvians. Thank you very much. Long life to Peru. Long life to the homeland. Thank you very much.